We're live. Let's go. Let's do this.
I'm ready.
Omar Ahmed Mir, first of all, I want to say thank you for coming to my show. And not only that, I want to admit something, which was that the beard is in the religion. The religion is not in the beard. You won that debate fair and square. I give you that.
Hey, you had asked me to try this out. I never had really grown a beard before, and so I grew it out for you. It's been 5 years now.
Oh, you do remember where that debate took place, right? We were
I do.
painting the mosque, the Ahmadiyya mosque.
It was a long time ago, and I remember that discussion. And you said try it out, and it was fun. It was actually fun painting it. And I said, you know something, I'm gonna throw it on. So yeah, I've been
Awesome.
sporting it for a while now.
Awesome, awesome. Where are you right now? Yeah, I love the background environment. Where is this place?
Yeah, so COVID lifestyle now, but I'm actually in our office. So I come into our office. I'm the only one who usually works out of here.
I got you.
So that's how we're operating. Everyone else is kind of working from home for the most
Okay,
part.
got it. Just a quick. I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and it just is amazing. All these accomplishments that you have up there. I mean, Columbia University Business School. Then you go from your first job, business analyst through manager, but then you get on the board of trustees. You jump from there, get into Russo Development, senior vice president, acquisitions. Then you jump from there, become a partner. Then you're a principal. Like you are, you're a principal, right? Isn't that like the highest thing in there?
I would say, um, you know, I've worked in, I've been working for the past 15, 16 years, and in terms of progression, there's no quick way to really. Some people find different ways to kind of get there. I've taken a more methodical approach to my career. So in terms of progression, it's followed a different path. I didn't really have necessarily a set plan, but this is kind of where life's kind of taken me. But I think real estate for me was always something interesting, something that I really wanted to get into.
Now, even in real estate, there's like the residential real estate, and then there's commercial real estate. Did you go from residential to commercial, or you always been in commercial throughout?
Yeah, so I've always been commercial. Residential real estate in terms of buying, selling homes or condos, that's completely separate. Commercial is just doing that on a much larger scale. So, think about the multifamily apartment buildings where, you know, you have apartment complexes of 200, 300 units, or an area that I focus on, which is industrial warehouse development and ownership. So those are the large warehouses you see for distribution, and so that's kind of where I focus right now.
So, as a young guy who's just like I looking at your resume and like how you've progressed in this field, can you share some like insights and what your journey was like, and how did you get so far so fast? For somebody who's just starting into real estate, how to go about it?
Yeah, I think fortunately for me, and again, not all by design. This is sometimes everything happens for other reasons, but I think my background was always finance and economics. So I think one thing that's always helpful, even in commercial real estate or any sort of areas within sort of the business finance realm, is that if you have a good understanding of how the numbers work, it can be very helpful just overall. It's not certainly the only path you need, but it's certainly something that as you progress in real estate, it's something you have a firm grasp on. So I was fortunate that sort of my background was sort of in finance, and that's the pathway that I took into it. Other people have taken different paths. I've seen people who know the development side or the construction side, and then they learn the finance later. For me, I was very fortunate. I think I had worked at one of the prestigious family companies, smaller boutique firm that did commercial real estate in New Jersey. And because I worked at a smaller firm, I got exposure to everything. So I did, acquisitions, which is sourcing deals, finding the opportunity, understanding the economics or underwriting behind it. But because it was a smaller company, I had to learn also how do you build, how do you construct, how do you get your approvals, how do you lease this facility.
So
So
let me
that,
let me just ask you a question right there. So
sure.
if somebody who's starting up, would you recommend them, like, let's say there's Keller Williams, like already established type of firms out there, and then there's like these smaller house, local companies. For somebody who's starting up, would you say like get your I'm talking about the expedited route to success. If you want to like skyrocket and not go the hard and long way, based on your experience, would you recommend putting a couple of years in something like Century 21 or Keller Williams, get that brand on your resume, on your name, and then leverage off of that? Or would you say build yourself with a local company and relationship and then take it from there?
Yeah, I would tell you, I look, from my personal experience, I've taken the long road, obviously,
Yeah.
and I haven't seen, very rarely do you see that there's some sort of quick, immediate solution to kind of get to the point of where it takes a long time to get there. I think if someone was starting today and they wanted to go into the business, brokerage isn't a bad place to start because you get exposure to a lot.
Yeah.
And I can't speak to Keller Williams and Century 21 because that's a little bit more on the residential side, but on the commercial side, you have companies like CBRE, Cushman and Wakefield, Jones Lang LaSalle, Avis and Young, those type of companies. The people who start off there, many people start off there because you get exposure to a lot,
Mm.
and then you can kind of figure out what sector do you like. Do you like apartments or warehouses or retail or office? And then you can kind of really get a feel for different things that you like. So I do agree with you. I think that's a great place to start. That's one route, but that's one place that a lot
Yeah,
of people are
like to
successful.
emphasize what I was saying, like for
Yeah,
instance, when I was getting into fighting, right, boxing,
yeah,
the route I went was I met people like you know, who had already done MMA. Like one of my coaches had done MMA, and he took the hard route. So he already gave me all the insight on what things to avoid. So
yeah.
I took the shortcut in that sense. I don't mean like cutting corners. I mean like the shortest route to avoiding all this bull crap and just getting straight to it. Where success is at.
Yeah, I definitely I think there are a lot of things that you can avoid. It's just ultimately you have to know what your goal is within real estate. You ask some questions early on, like what area do you like? Do you like commercial? Do you like residential? What is it that you want to focus on? And then within that, there are different things that you can do. But I think one of the things I do like the brokerage angle. I think that if you start off there, you get exposure to a lot. You also get to meet a lot of people
Hmm.
in the field, especially on the ownership side, and that way you build a lot of relationships.
So let me give you a quick little background, and then what I need you is to help me avoid these certain leech personalities that I came across when I got into real estate, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
I was at Merrill Lynch in finance, and then I was like, you saw me in my crazy phase, right, where I was just like, really against the whole system, and I was like, I'm gonna recreate the whole system, and so I quit that job and I became a door-to-door salesman. And I said, I'm gonna, while I was doing my master's, I was like doing this. And so I got into sales. I did door to door. Then from there, there was no money in it, so I went into cell phone sales. No money in it. I went to furniture sales. Not that much money, a little bit better. Then I went into real estate and became a runner. So they used to call me a runner, where I would run and show houses. And at the end of the day, I sold. I made the entire deal. It was a $400,000 deal or something like this, and they gave me $1,200 for showing the house. But I made that deal actually happen, right? And then,
Right.
so I saw this was like too much run around, and they were making all the money. And then at the end of the day, I was like, it's not worth it. So I went into car sales. Money was a little bit better there, and then from there, I jumped into IT because I was like, this whole sales thing is not as healthy for me for a lifestyle. But real estate, out of all the sales jobs that I did, seemed like the best one, the most prestigious one, the most classiest one. And once you make it and you establish yourself, it's great. But in that process, I came across all these brokers and all these different types that were always trying to like manipulate or control, and I was always getting the lowest chunk of the pie. You know what I mean? So how do you place yourself in a way where you're getting the biggest chunk of the pie if you're the one really doing the runaround?
That's a great question. I can't tell you that I have a great answer for you on that or what you want to hear because I think, ultimately when you start in an industry, especially in real estate, I think one of the things to understand with real estate is that there typically in a real estate company, there are few people making a lot of the key decisions. So what I mean by that is that if you work at like a Google or Apple or one of these type of tech companies, or you work at Merrill Lynch, like you mentioned, there are thousands and thousands of people. I think in real estate, because there are few people, it's harder and you have to prove yourself. In order to go around that, I think the key thing is probably the better thing is you want to work on a team. If you're going to go into brokerage and start off there, you want to work on a deal that transacts a lot.
Mm,
So if you're the runner on that deal, you want to make sure you're doing a lot of those
mm,
and getting that experience so you kind of slowly move up.
mm.
And if that team has prestige, then you're going to sort of it's going to be a ripple effect. So that's what I would probably say on that.
What's the commission structure for somebody who's starting up, and what's the negotiation leverage you have? And I'm also, if you could throw some insight, residential versus commercial, just to give an idea of like when somebody's new. Let's say we're just getting a license, right? And they're taking their class, they're going to take the exam and get the license. And when they get offered by the brokerage to work for them, what sort of expectations should they have? And is there any negotiation power they have on the commission structure for starting?
Yeah, so unfortunately, on the brokerage side, as you've kind of experienced, I can start with the commercial side. Typically, it's not going to be a get rich quick scheme on the brokerage side. I think a lot of times you work off a draw, which means the team really believes in you, so that they're going to pay you out of their personal money because they don't really get. There's not really a salary, right? On the brokerage side, they're getting paid on deals that they do. So they typically on someone new, they would give them a draw,
Mm-hmm.
and then on deals made, there's usually a negotiated agreement. And for people who are just starting off, it's very not well defined. So if the team is making $100,000 on a transaction, what does the new person get? It's really whatever that team is willing to offer.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a small amount, and that changes over time as you progress. That increases over time.
But roughly, like, what's the industry standard? Like, what is a good, reasonable percentage to start off, or it's going to vary
They won't
vastly?
give you. They won't give you. A lot of times, they won't even. It varies so vastly depending on the team.
Hmm.
And usually, if you're brand new with no experience, you have no leverage,
Hmm.
right? So usually you're getting in, and you could be, on a small deal, you could be making $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 per deal,
Hmm.
and deals could be 60 days. They could be longer if they're land deals or whatever. So depends on the size of the deal. Depends on the deal. So it could be a small amount that you're making per transaction.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in residential, it's typically, there's a 3% fee, and then there's overrides if there's a shared sort of if there's a deal with another broker, and then you're getting a percentage of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times people like the residential early on because it's a set percentage,
Mm.
right? You know what you're getting if you're working on a team or you're not. You know that procuring broker, if you're representing the buyer, or if you're if you're representing the seller, that it's set amount and you're getting a split.
Mm.
On the commercial side, it's really up to the team negotiation in terms of what they're giving, and a lot of times you're on a draw
Mm-hmm.
for the first couple of years before you start making real money.
So let's say if you were in someone's shoes who was just starting into real estate, and they didn't have the steady income coming in. What route would you take to ensure survival at the same time growing in this field?
That's the hardest question.
Mm.
In order to do that, I would always focus on if you were going to go into brokerage on that side. And look, that's only one option that we're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you were going to go on the brokerage side and that survival is key, and you're worried about sustenance over that time, you want to work on a team that transacts a lot,
Mm.
period. You want a transactional team, and you just want to look at their history and see how much they're transacting.
Volume.
The
You got to
other
go with
option,
high volume teams.
you want to go about volume. The other thing is you can work, you could try to get a job for a landlord, right? For a company that buys and builds and owns real estate and have a salary and bonus structure. But, again, those are harder to break into
Well,
off the
that
bat.
brings me to a good question. So if I am interviewing, if I'm interviewing a broker rather than they interviewing me for us to figure out if I'm going to work for them or not, what are sort of the questions I should be asking the broker to know if this is the kind of company that's going to ensure my survival as well as growth? Like you said, volume. What else would you ask them?
Yeah, I want to see how active they are,
Mm.
how many deals they're doing, what's their geographical reach, how do they typically, how long have the people who've worked there, how long have they been there? What's been the turnover ratio of some of the younger people on the team? And I think those would be the starting questions that I would ask.
Right. And to be successful in your field, I mean, I know obviously math, knowledge, all those things matter, but I would have to, how much did your Columbia knowledge or what were some skills, I guess what I'm trying to say is traits or skills or qualities that you think helped you the most to get where you are? Because obviously you're on a fast track, you know, and I know you might be thinking whether you want to share those secret tips for the fast track or not, but that's what my job is. I want to get that out of you.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm an open book. So I'd love for, I think one of the things is that if you figure something out, you want other people to sort of join you.
Yeah.
So I'm always an open book with that stuff, just first and foremost.
Hmm.
I think in terms of what really helps, I think you have to, the Columbia experience, like getting an MBA, does it help? Does it check the box and stuff like that? I mean, it does a little bit, just networking, or if we're going for financing and doing some of the stuff, you do run into other MBAs from Columbia. So it is helpful from that standpoint.
Hmm.
I think the biggest thing I got from the MBA was just it gives you a framework to solve problems.
Hmm.
So when I have issues, I have sort of a thought process that is ingrained in me from my MBA of like, okay, here's a problem. This is how you have to go through and kind of solve it. So that's where MBA, because look, there's only so much you can learn from a textbook,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And a lot of what I've learned has been real life experience. It's using some of that background with the real life experience, because frankly, there's no way that you're going to get there unless you're actually in the seat, you're doing the work, and you're trying to do that one role extremely well.
Yeah.
And when I started off in this field, it was sourcing deals, going out, finding deals, figuring them out to understand if there were good investments that we could buy and own long term. And that's where how I built
So
my career.
if you had to put your chips in whether your soft skills in terms of human skills, interactions, negotiation, math, whether etc., or versus scanning for the right deal and placing yourself in the right place at the right time, how would you divide in real estate to be successful? Would you say it's like a 50-50, or would you say that 70 you got to focus on finding the right deal and 30% is just like your skill set in terms of how you talk and finalize the deal?
Yeah, I think it's a combo, right? Like you need to have. I mean, I think people don't understand. Like for real estate, I don't think it's one thing that makes. So certainly on the commercial side, it's not one thing that makes you successful. I think people need to like you in whatever you're doing.
Hmm.
I don't care what field you're in, and certainly in real estate this applies. I think you have to be likable. If you're someone's going to trust you that they want to sell you real estate, right, or sell you a piece of property, they need to trust that you're going to actually follow through with what you're going to say you're going to follow through with. And I think for me, it's always been understanding every aspect of the deal, every aspect of what goes into a deal. So yeah, finance is important, but I understand the land. I understand the entitlements of getting zoning. I understand the dirt. I understand construction. Like you need to understand every aspect to give confidence to someone that, you know, yes, he's the right person I should sell to because he's going to get this deal done for me. So I think in terms of soft skill ratio, yes, that's important. And being transparent and being able to communicate really well is very important. But I think ultimately it's your knowledge of the deal and getting it done.
Hmm.
And the famous line ABC always be closing.
Yeah.
That's what people look for, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's really ABC. Can you kind of get this deal done? And that's ultimately it.
What have you found? The which first personality type have you found to be more successful in your circle? Is it the more Don Draper type of success, hungry, push in your face type of, or like, do you think that kind of lean back and kind of draw them in? Which one do you think is more effective? What's his name? Grant Cardone. Is that Aries
Yeah.
type or push in the face type of approach you prefer, or kind of lay back?
Yeah, look, I think, as you know, from the world, I think real estate has a lot of different personalities, right? A lot of different, and there's not really one set that, hey, this you need this personality to be successful. I would say the one trait that everyone has is that they're highly competitive,
Hmm.
right? Highly competitive, and in real estate, it's problem solving because a lot of things you're trying to figure out on the fly in a short amount of time.
Hmm.
So if you're buying an existing project, what are the things I need to do to sort of improve my income, or if you're building a piece of property, what are the things that I need to solve in order to close? So I think the thing that you'll find across the board is people are highly competitive
Hmm.
and they love to problem solve. That's probably the one trait you'll see across the board.
I got it. So, are there any major projects that you're working on? Anything you're excited about in your circle that you'd like to share with the audience?
I do more warehouses, last mile
Mm-hmm.
distribution.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these, you hear for Amazon, these warehouse type facilities for e-commerce companies like them. So I just finished a ground up development that was 400,000 square feet, so a pretty large warehouse in northern New Jersey. I was pretty excited about that. We've built some larger ones. We built a 950,000 square footer recently as well. So those are exciting projects for me because they're heavily contaminated pieces of dirt. You've got to figure out and solve for that, and ultimately you have to try to get them approved and land a tenant for them. So I think that's probably a project that I've been working on that I'm pretty excited about.
Do you offer any type of mentorship, or anyone needs advice or something? Is there a way they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, I can give my email address afterwards. I'm happy to provide any mentorship or if anyone has any questions. I think we've been looking to diversify our industry quite a bit because it's not there's not much diversity in commercial real estate at all. So we've been doing that over time. So I'm happy to help in any manner, and people just have general questions. I'm happy to answer that.
Last question I had was, if you could give a general idea or general advice to the audience or the person who, let's put some specifics around this person, right? So let's say this guy was an Uber driver, and he's been trying to survive and take care of his family and whatnot, and he's just got this idea that, hey, maybe I should explore real estate. So for this guy or girl, how would you, can you give some advice or things to watch out for and things to take advantage of to get into that secure place as soon as possible? What would be your last advice to that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking, the first advice I give is you should do a lot of reading on the topic. There are a lot of good books and publications that you can find because I think ultimately you need to see what's the best first avenue to go after. So if I was starting off in the industry and I was, if I talked to my young self, I wouldn't be able to myself go after a 400,000 piece, square foot project to work off of, right? That's a big project to go off of to start. So you want to find the right project area that you want to work in that you're passionate about. So if you have the passion, I think that's important. The second thing, if you're just starting off, is that there's huge financial commitments to this. So you want to start off on a small scale where you can do a project, and if you want to get in, and try to have one success so you learn a lot through that process. And you don't want to scale too big too quickly, otherwise you can get into trouble. So ultimately, if you're starting off fresh, I would do a lot of reading on the topic. There's a lot of books that are publicly available that you can kind of read on terms of getting started and how to do that, how to look at what's a good investment, what's not a good investment, and start really small. I think that's probably the best bet that I would give someone.
Do you have any recommendations on the books or things that people can look into that really inspired you or helped you a lot?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's been quite a bit of time since I've looked at those books that really got me into the industry, and
Mm-hmm.
then I was sort of in it. I I'll have to check, and I can get back, and maybe we can have a link to some of the books
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I've
I'll put all
read.
the
But I
information in the description section. If you would
yeah,
remember later on, I'll put those in the link.
I know that someone that I was mentoring was reading the Millionaire Investor's Guide to Real Estate, and there were a lot of good questions that they brought up from those books
Mm.
just to kind of start. And I think just understanding the basics of investment I think are important because there's a lot of work that goes into it. I think people need to understand that, in terms of dealing with tenants and improvements and zoning and stuff like that. So I think understanding that ahead of time is just knowing what you're getting into will be very helpful for anyone looking to get into it.
What was the greatest life lesson you learned on your journey in real estate?
The greatest lesson is sometimes finishing in second place is probably the best thing in your life.
I like that. No one ever
Yeah,
said that to me.
yeah. Sometimes it's winning by not winning the deal. So
Yeah.
you always have to be. That's probably one of the best lessons I've learned.
Hmm.
So you know, and you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. You want to just make sure everything's manageable.
Thank you so much, Omar Bhai. I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure.
Anytime.
Yeah, I'll see you soon.
Good seeing you. Take care.